Welcome back to Highly Respected. I'm your host, Scott Greer, and today we're going to have another fantastic episode on this holiday. I was debating whether to have an episode today or to take the holiday off, but I decided to go with an episode anyway because we've got a lot of questions and I can't hold them all for the mailbag. And I prefer recording episodes rather than writing out answers unless I'm on vacation of some sort. So today we're going to be answering questions. It's probably going to be a bit shorter episode today than normal. But the first question we've got, I usually like to go off on the first topic. And the first topic we've got are questions from Tex. He asked about the trans shooter in Minnesota and whether we can reclassify forms of trans ideology as mental illness and whether that can keep people from owning guns. And he also said, how realistic do you think a reestablishment of the mental asylum system is? So I want to take into this. I mean, this is an old story. It's been over a week old. Twitter's no longer talking about it. News has moved on to other things, enjoying the weekend. Talking about college football. We've got some college football related questions later on, so it's no longer as pertinent. I think you guys all know what happened. A deranged trans shooter shot up a Catholic school in Minneapolis. People are now demanding gun control. Others are demanding demon control from the right. So there's a lot going on here, and we're going to particularly focus on whether we can restrict gun ownership to trans and whether we will restore the mental asylum system. Personally, I don't think this country can actually do that. Even with the backlash against the trans issue and how we think about this matter, the country is a lot more anti-trans than it was in 2021. And there is a backlash towards it. I mean, you can see the issue of trans athletes and girls sports. Even some Democrats are saying that's going too far. Likely for feminist reasons, or we got to protect girls sports and the sacredness of girls sports that has now become apparent in our culture, especially with the obsession with Caitlin Clark of the WNBA. Now we feel that we must defend women's sports, but that's another matter. So we've definitely turned a lot against trans, but the thing is that you have to note about America, and I've mentioned this point a lot, and some people deny that. They're like, we're not a culturally libertarian state. We still have taxes or something of the sort. They always make that claim. That's not true. We are an extremely culturally libertarian state where we view individual rights as paramount. And part of those individual rights is your ability to own a firearm and not be placed in a mental asylum against your own volition. So these are the things that are going up against this. And if the Trump administration tried to say you're transgender and you can't own a firearm, prompt a lot of lawsuits. I don't think the Supreme Court would uphold that. As then they would just say, well, this is a lifestyle choice. I don't know if they would go as far to say like, well, they think they are trans, so they have to be. It'll just say this is a lifestyle choice, and you can't restrict somebody's ability to exercise their constitutional rights on a lifestyle choice. Now, if they try to label it a mental illness, I'd go up against even the culture. The culture views it as more negatively than it did, say, 4 years ago. But at the same time, they don't want to go so far as to have these extreme, I don't want to say extreme measures because I would say they're logical measures, reasonable measures taken against people who claim to be trans if we determine them to be mentally ill. And I've already seen with the gun rights groups is that they don't like this idea. First off, gun rights groups, a lot of these activists are now gun rights maximalists. They get mad if black kids who shouldn't be owning guns are arrested for illegal firearm ownership on the streets of DC. They say this is an assault on the Second Amendment and against the spirit of it. There's a number of them who will defend arming illegal aliens, saying they need to use them against ICE, whatever idiotic anarchism is behind that. And even with this, they would, get leery of it. Some of it is that they don't like any gun restrictions at all, and that they know that no matter how logical or reasonable, that one gun restriction, create a domino effect that will lead to gun restrictions that impact normal gun owners. And you can see that with the red flag gun laws, which red flag gun laws can be used against someone who is just a right-wing extremist. And they have used this before. It's saying somebody's tweets, making jokes or whatever, or saying right-wing rhetoric can be used against them to take away their guns. And if you utilize the trans thing to say that this can be utilized to take away their guns, that they can make the argument, well, then they could classify right-wing extremism as a mental illness, and that's a reason to take away guns. And a lot of judges, especially in blue states, and I think it's particularly in the Pacific Northwest where they've been doing that to taking away guns from alleged right-wing extremists, that they would just say, well, the current government says that, particular ideology can be a sign of mental illness, and thus we're going to use this against right-wingers in our state. I don't think Tex says it's an 80-20 issue. It is not an 80-20 issue. Americans really don't like infringement on individual rights, even if it makes sense for the public good. They really don't like that. And it's the reason why we are now allowing the legalization of weed, expansion of sports betting, even with some of the greater access to porn and other things, there is this desire that we have to have individual rights maximalism. And even that's why gun rights is expanding so much, is that we feel, well, you can't tell someone that they can't bring an AR-15 in Home Depot. And why do they need a permit to carry that? They should just have open carry. These are the type of thinking that a lot of Americans have now with the defense of individual rights, is that it's very hard to establish a common good in this country outside of prioritizing individual rights, where the individual decide what's their common good. So if you want to dress up in a fucking fursuit and carry around a gun, I don't know if you could do concealed carry in your fursuit, but they're like, this is freedom, this is liberty, this is what we should be about. Even though I think most right-wingers would understand that we should probably not let furries do open carry, but that's against the spirit of the times and against our prioritization of individual rights. And it'd be very tough to do that. And I think that they could make an argument that, well, first they'd have to get psychiatry, the body of psychologists and psychiatrists on their side to say it's a mental illness. That's not going to happen. These people are libtarded. They're not going to agree that it's a mental illness. So if this is taken to the Supreme Court, it would be simply saying the government is saying you can't own a firearm due to your sexual orientation or your lifestyle choice. Unlikely to be upheld. For when it comes to individual rights, I think they would have a tough time defining it as mental illness. I mean, in a better society, yeah, we would, but you'd also come up against the opposition of the gun rights people, that they would say it's as making the point with red flag gun laws, that if you start to find this is a mental illness, then they will find right-wing extremism or something else that we believe is normal as a mental illness, and then they will try to take guns, or they just simply oppose any type of restrictions on guns. So that would not be allowed. Bringing back the mental asylum system is the same. We really don't have the stomach to send mentally ill people back to the asylums. First off, mental illness is skyrocketing in this country. So a lot of individuals will think, well, I have depression, they might send me to a mental asylum, or I have ADHD, that's a mental illness, that they might send me to a mental asylum. And so if the individual feels that this could be used against them and take away their rights, then people are going to be really upset about it. And to have all these, schizophrenics and extreme depressives all in the mental asylums, it would really upset Americans, because they feel that that's an infringement on individual rights, and then there needs to be a nicer approach to this. Americans don't really have the stomach for a lot of things. It's like, our country is getting mad about the deportations that Trump administration is doing, and then some people are like, we should do this nicer. How the fuck are you going to do it nicer? This is the only way we can accomplish it. But I already knew this, that when we were going to have, I noticed this last year, is that a lot of Americans are going to get squeamish when we start doing deportations. We're not even doing it to the extent that we would like, but we're still, making an effort about this, and we're trying to do terror tactics in order to scare away migrants into leaving on their own, which is apparently working, as that there's been 1.5 million migrants apparently to have already left the country, whether through deportations or on their own. So likely a million that itself deported. But even with them, the country gets squeamish about it. And if you saw, if this country gets squeamish about us strong arming and grabbing rapists, gang bangers, drug dealers, pedophiles, and picking them up from court and then hauling them back to their home country, what do you think is going to happen if we're using those same tactics against people who have mental illness? You're going to see them like, oh, that's my friend. Oh, that's my sister. Oh, no, we can't do that. Oh, this is terrible. The American people are going to get like, this is really bad. I mean, that's why it is. And also, they just think if it's an infringement on individual rights, that you should be allowed to be mentally ill and do whatever you please. I think you could use it possibly against the homeless, because there is like a public backlash against the homeless, because we're having so many. If you live in any major city, you've got a major homeless problem. Far more than you would have had, say, 20 years ago. And a lot of that's due to the increased use of our drug abuse, allowing just mentally ill people to wander around, do as they please. You could potentially use something that, like, the homeless are placed in some type of asylum system. That would probably be for the best, but it would be on a limited basis. Any type of mass expansion, Americans are going to think, oh, I'm going to be thrown in there, and that's a horrifying to me, so they don't want to do it. But I mean, the main point is that it's very tough to do necessary, logical, and reasonable things because of the desire to maximize individual rights. And generally, I think this is a good thing, because sometimes when they argue for things to do for the common good, that means that we've got to have affirmative action, that we've got to learn about white privilege, that you've got to be sent to a ghetto school for the common good, and a lot of other things. Is that a lot of people who argue for the common good do for left-wing reasons, but there's at a time where individual rights can trump public safety. And even with the gun rights, a lot of the gun rights movement now, they're starting to do that. Which, I mean, that's the reason why we're having expanding gun rights, which is good. I mean, we should have universal concealed carry across the country, and we should have people allowed to buy AR-15s for home defense and other things. We shouldn't have restrictions on those matters. And I am full support of concealed carry permit, and we should allow that in more places. But I still think that it should be that criminals, illegal aliens, and mentally ill should not have firearms, which some of the gun rights movement is now opposed to that, because they want to continue to maximize it and appeal to the culturally libertarian sentiment of this country. And so that's why I'm not optimistic we can get either of these things happen with banning trans people from guns and relaunching the mental asylum system. Because we've had school shootings and mass shootings for, nearly my entire life. Columbine happened when I was 8 years old. And ever since then, people have been saying we need to open up the asylums. And I remember Ann Coulter always making this argument. I remember a right-winger told me that we shouldn't do this because then they would throw in right-wing extremists at that time. And we've always utilized that argument. But now, the right is turning. I'll have an article about this, is that we don't need to open up the mental asylums. We need to have demon control. We need to have exorcists in every location to defend against school shooters. So that we've moved on to a more fantastical argument on how to deal with on mass shooters. So I don't know if that would even work. So that's my thoughts on that. Here's a topic that I intended to not talk about, but it's a major cultural topic, and I missed it last Wednesday, but I'm going to talk about it today. And everyone's going to roll their eyes. Some people might turn this off, but this is like a huge cultural event, and it deserves notice. And so Stealth Bomber asks, what are my thoughts on Taylor Swift's engagement? Are you surprised that out of all guys she's dated, she marries the one who has less wealth and less intelligence than she does? Well, he has more wealth than a lot of the other guys she was dating. I mean, probably far more wealth. I mean, the last guy, the guy in 1975, Matt Healy or whatever, I'm probably getting his name wrong, but I doubt he's barely a millionaire at most. And he's probably doesn't have the shit together and throws his money around. The Travis Kelce is a high paying, is a multi-millionaire who does a ton of endorsement deals and stuff. He's very wealthy. He's not. I mean, it's very hard for Taylor Swift to marry someone with similar wealth. She has to marry like a tech billionaire to have someone with more wealth than she does, and he makes more than most of the actors that she's dated. So he's probably been his wealthiest boyfriend she's had. But he's clearly the dumbest. I mean, we're not going to hate on Kelsey too much, but that's it. There's some important elements with this that I want to keep this brief. I think there's two things. It's like why she chose Kelsey and the meaning or the message that's this can be delivered to American women. I think the reason why she chose Kelsey is that most of the guys she dated were artists, actors, and singers. A lot of them were highly neurotic, disorganized, not traditionally masculine, didn't have their shit together, wouldn't commit, were complicated people, much harder to control, and left her writing a lot of songs to bitch about her boyfriends. Kelsey is one of the simplest people on earth. He is probably one of the least neurotic people on earth. He's just easy. He's probably very easy to understand what he wants. He's like open about. He's earnest. He's probably not he's not a complicated individual whatsoever. Very simple. Makes him easier to control because Taylor Swift, there's clearly an IQ disadvantage here. And Taylor Swift probably wants a guy who is both easy to control, but also traditionally masculine. And Kelsey provides that, is that he is, rather than the patriarch or the leader, he is a bodyguard. Which a lot of women want, is that they say they want a traditional masculine man to be the leader. But really what they want is a bodyguard. And by bodyguard, you could even say they want a golem. It's that they want a, fierce, traditionally masculine guy, but they are entirely in control of. And that's like what a bodyguard is. You point out, it's like, go deal with that person, or go here, you are serving me. There is a power discrepancy between you and the bodyguard. The bodyguard is serving you. The bodyguard is not leading you around. Now, the bodyguard, in certain dangerous situations will guide them and lead them through and take care of them, which women want. But in generally, the women want to be charged the relationship, and they want to direct where they go. And this is it is with Kelsey. I mean, Kelsey is, he's excited. He's like, whoa, I'm going to all these cool concerts, and now I'm like a celebrity. This is awesome. He doesn't have any of the self-doubts or self-reflection or neuroticism of her past boyfriends. And so he's just like, wow. He's like a kid in a candy store with this stuff. So he's very simple, easy to control, but he also is like a protector. He's clearly gonna, if someone's bothering her, he clearly can fuck that guy up. He's a professional football player. So he demonstrates what they want is that's what they want as a bodyguard. And so I saw like a bunch of right-wingers who are like, this is what's awesome. Women are now going to be turning to jocks for dating. It's like, when have women not wanted to date jocks? It's like, it's not like that they all decided that they wanted to date soy boys. They prefer jocks. But the problem is for a lot of women like Taylor Swift, is that they focus on their career, and then those guys got wiped up early on. And generally it was like similar situation. There's a lot of just like very masculine, very Chad guys that I went to high school with, they're on the football team or I was in a fraternity with, and then they get wiped up, and it's like, oh, the old ball and chain tells me I got to be home at 8:00 prompt. I'm going home. And, they're not, they're fine with that. That they're very simple. The wife figure out how their pressure points, and, there's the IQ disadvantage. And so they become, the servant of the household, the bodyguard of the household. And I think it's more that that's really what they want, is that they think that like now all these women are going to turn to traditionally masculine men to, lead them around and stuff. But it's not so much that. It's that they now it's going to solidify to these women that they need to get a moron who they can easily control, but he's traditionally masculine, and he'll whisk them around and whatever, but he's never going to doubt her control, and that's really is more the message for young women. I think there's still positive that Taylor Swift is finally getting married, and that tells women that, oh, if Taylor Swift is finally getting married, I should do that too. But there's still an issue of, or the issue is that I think a lot of right wingers were celebrating the type, but it's not so much that it's a return of traditional masculine men and that they're leadership roles, because Kelsey is clearly not the leader in this relationship. He is the bodyguard of the relationship. He is almost the Gollum of the relationship in comparison to the discrepancy with Taylor Swift. And I think with a lot of the career-oriented girl bosses, that's going to be the type of man they want. I did see one female right-wing anon talk about how she now wanted a Travis Kelce type. And it was something along the lines of, I want a bodyguard. That I don't want someone who's smart, and he's not going to be a neurotic, and so he'll just be there to be the simpleton bodyguard to guide me along my path. So I guess that is what it is, but it is funny with right-wing Twitter celebrating. Is like, if you're on right-wing Twitter, you are complete opposite of Travis Kelce. Like, you are not Travis Kelce whatsoever in that. So that's not going to be you. You're completely different. You've probably got a lot more neuroticism. You've probably got an inner voice. You've got an internal monologue. And these are things that Kelsey doesn't. I think Taylor Swift just likes it because it's like less stressful, much easier to figure out. I don't know what she's going to write songs about. It's like, my boyfriend caught a football, it's like very simple. I think she just likes that. It's a breath of fresh air from her last boyfriend she was dating, and men she dated who were very difficult and complicated, and inspired a lot of her bitching about them. But I don't think that's going to be the case with Kelsey. So sorry to anybody who didn't want to hear about that, but it's important stuff. It is what the culture cares about. So I've got some more questions to move on. Deuteronormative asks, have you noticed a decrease in discourse across the left-right divide? It seems the country is polarized so extremely, nobody bothers to engage with the other side like was common in 2015. I don't know about that. I think it's... we see that on the online sphere because if you're on X, you rarely interact with the opposing side unless it's a viral tweet that everyone decides to dunk on. And there's fewer liberals. Is that liberals either stay in their corner of Twitter or they retreat to blue sky, and you're just not noticing their discourse that's happening. And I think that's why everyone on the right is now hyper focused on right-wing discourse, as that's all they interact with. And that's definitely different from 2015, where Twitter was primarily a liberal space and a left-wing space. So you were interacting with what the other side was thinking and saying. Well, now they're just on blue sky and we're not engaged with it. So I think that's more from the online sphere. In terms of mainstream media, they're definitely interacting with it. I mean, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, all these major outlets care a lot about what the right is saying. They try to showcase it to the rest of the public. I think it's more that the right... I even noticed this when I was at the Daily Caller writing columns, that the right seemed less informed over what the left is thinking. And it's even more the case now that we don't have an idea of what the left is thinking because we're just not engaged with their content. Some ways it's that... For the younger crowd, for Zoomers, I'm noticing that because their formats are TikTok and Reels, less so than X. For millennials, it was X that was the primary political expression and how they got news. For Zoomers, it's primarily the video sharing platforms. And there's a merging of type of far right, far left talking points where they engage with a lot of different content creators across the board because it's all just short video clips and they're just like, oh, this is interesting, oh, this is interesting, oh, this, and they get all that. And I can notice this on X is sometimes I'll see an account and I have to take like 5 minutes to figure out whether they're right or left. And you could even see that with the Minnesota trans shooter, that person had a lot of stuff like these phrases and stuff from the right all over his gun, and it was just a sign of mental illness. But I think it's all just comes jumbled together for a lot of the younger crowd due to their media consumption. Among the older crowd, I mean, if you're over 30, you can clearly tell the difference between right or left, even though some groups, some of the rhetoric sounds similar. You can even see that at among the older Wignats and Chapo cells that a lot of their rhetoric now sounds similar. But for the most part, you can still tell the differences between, say, a right wing anon and a Chapo cell, depending on the faction that they're in. So it just depends on where your media consumption is. If it's on the online sphere, yes, there's way more discourse or debate or awareness of what the other side is saying, particularly for the right, than it would have been in 2015 when everyone, no matter your political persuasion, was on X. But now X is more of a right-wing vehicle or just a slop vehicle, and liberals and leftists aren't really as apparent on there as they were in the past. Sharecrop has a question. He says, I see anti-boomers posts like this on X which claim that the left's protest movements are old, impotent, and pathetic. Do you know what the young left really believes? What are we up against? And the post is the right-wing, it's from Fraser Payne, the right-wing boomer libtard youth dichotomy was a psychological trick to make leftism seems inevitable. Look at these people, it dies with them. That's not really the case. The thing is that the young crowd don't do protests and anything. And why we're seeing so many boomer libs out there, there's a couple things to look into this factor. Is that one, why are the boomer libs so engaged? One is that I think a lot of them got mentally warped during COVID. And so some of these guys maybe been right of center, but then they moved to the left because of MSNBC, CNN programming, and COVID fears. And you can still see a lot of these people wearing masks around, and they all thought they were going to die from COVID, and they're really mad that the right didn't take COVID seriously. So I think, and also they got programming about Black Lives Matter and American oligarchy and whatever, and autocracy, and so they moved to the left. And there's been a notable shift among boomers for that. So that's one. Second is that among younger people, that most younger people got burnout. Millennials have been burnt out by politics, whether they were right or left. They are really more the left-wing millennials have been burnt out. They don't want to do protest anything. They either got strung out on drugs for the Antifa types, or they're maybe starting families, or they're middle aged now, so they're not that eager to go out and protest and stuff. They've got other things to do, and they're just burnt out by politics, and I think they're much more nihilistic about this if they're leftists. And then when it comes to Zoomers are just not into this stuff. They're not into protesting. The only thing that can really get them to protest is Palestine stuff, and that's primarily Muslims who are engaged in it. There's not that many non-Muslims who really engage in the Palestinian, the street protests. Obviously, a lot of Zoomers, regardless of their background, are interested in Palestine and very critical of Israel. But in terms of getting involved in the protest, is primarily a Muslim thing. There are some whites who are there, liberal whites, but that's, they're still the minority. The majority is Muslims. So that's really all that it is. The Zoomers are just not as interested in protest politics like millennials were. And the one thing young left really believes, I think that they are much more socialist, much more hostile. I mean, they're not that much. There's about the same that the Bernie Bros were a decade ago. I think they're just there. Is that the difference is that millennials were much more interested in street protests and activism, while Zoomer leftists are not outside of Palestine. But as I keep saying, the only ones really doing the actual activism are Muslims. So the real issue is that I think the right is taking the idea that it's now boomer libtards versus Zoomer right wing extremists, and that is also wrong. And a lot of guys are saying this, and most of the guys who make this point are millennials who are in their 40s. Like, the people most eager for this are Gen X right wingers, are people over 35. I mean, if you're over 35, you're still mostly millennial. I mean, you'd have to be under 45 to be definitely a millennial. But the over 35 right is extremely into this idea. While young men, compared to millennials a decade ago, young millennial men are more to the right, it's more of a FanDuel American mindset than the right-wing extremists that we see on Twitter. So it's more that these guys who are culturally libertarian, they want to have their fun and peace, they don't like woke, they just want to be left alone to enjoy things, and they don't like the girl bossery of the left, and they like that Trump is a boss. That's basically it. They're not, but we have this mentality that all Zoomers are returning to trad Latin mass. They are fully engaged in X content, which that's not even true. They're watching TikTok and Reels, and that's a completely different media format. And they have this idea that the Zoomers are going to save everything, is that they're extremely based. I think the ones who are fully political, who are fully into conservatism, are far better than the millennials who were fully conservative back in 10 years ago. Actually, I don't think I know. They're much better. The ones who are fully politically engaged are much better than the fully politically engaged Zoomers are much better than the fully politically engaged millennials on the right than they were 10 years ago. 100%. But that is a minority within. That is not the majority of Zoomers. Now, Zoomer males, even the ones who are not politically engaged, are probably are better simply by being FanDuel Americans than whatever millennials were 10 years ago. But you should not mistake that for them being fully right-wing extremists, which I generally see this. I saw like tweets like that like Gen Alpha is going to be full like Nat sock. I don't think so. And it's like just a few days before they showed that Gen Alpha is only 43% white. So it's like, how are you have to keep in mind is that, Zoomers are likely the first white minority generation. I think the stats still show that they're white majority, but I think due to immigration and a lot of those are young people that it's probably changed it to being the first white minority generation. And you have to keep that in mind when everyone's like, the Zoomers are going to save us from the soy-lennials. And it even gets that case among Gen Alpha. And you also forget in this with the Zoomer women are just as leftist as millennial women, if not more so. There's just this gender discrepancy, which wasn't as apparent among millennials, is that the women are fully left-wing while the guys lean right. Important note is lean right, not right-wing extremists, which I think in a decade ago it would have been lean left. Now it leans right, which is an improvement, but you guys should not mistake that for being, one, this is all Zoomers, and that Zoomers are extremely based. The ones who are fully politically engaged in conservative politics, right-wing politics, are much more politically based than the millennials were. However, that is a minority group. The majority is not quite in that demographic. So I do think that there's some that's like, well, once the boomer... the last point I want to have is that there's a lot of this idea that once the boomers die, like, we're going to have a right-wing revolution and everything. And the boomers are the last people opposed to it. You have to remember is that the boomers are the widest generation. and they're still pretty conservative voters. And a lot of the problems you have with boomers are going to be magnified when Gen Xers are retired. It's probably going to be worse problems in terms of wealth hoarding and this entitled attitude. It's going to be worse with the Gen Xers when they in 10 or 20 years. And the boomers are still majority are voting conservative. And you have to remember is that by celebrating the death of boomers, you're celebrating the quickening of us turning into a minority, of whites turning into a minority. And you always have to be careful what you wish for when these things happen. So, but in terms of like what Fraser Payne is saying that it'll die with them, that's not the case. It's going to continue on. It's just going to continue on in a different form. It's leftism isn't simply the old man thing and the right is the young man's game. A lot of the right, we could see in 2028 that a lot of these young men, depending on the economic situation, lean left and vote Democratic. And so those trends could change in 4 years. So you have to be looking out for that, not making quite confident predictions, in my opinion. K-Max has some questions. He has something about the IQ summit. He said, you discussed SEC football and how much it replaced Southern culture. How much does this remain true regardless of the racial breakdowns of those teams? If every quarterback is black and all the stars remain black, Southerners do not care. Yes, they don't care. No, they don't care. They would have cared 20 years ago, but I don't know. I remember, I grew up in Tennessee, and they loved T. Martin. T. Martin was the quarterback for the Tennessee team that won the national title in 1998. And they all loved T. Martin. T. Martin was a hero because he won a national title, and that's really what matters. And so that's more than 25 years ago. And that's especially true today. They don't really care if the quarterback is black. There's a weird mindset with this. It's that they don't really care about the race of the team, but then they will care about who's coming into their house, who their daughter's dating, what the demographics of the fraternity and sorority are. They still care about that. So you'll have guys that will insist that their fraternity must have an all-white pledge class. But yet they don't care if the quarterback of Ole Miss or Alabama is black. So they don't really care. Is that they care about winning. And that's something that you got to, hopefully you learn from my podcast, is that a big reason why SEC football is bigger than the Confederacy is the SEC football represents winning and success. And the Confederacy does not. And it's even been the case, I was watching the Netflix series on the Dallas Cowboys, which is pretty good. And the Dallas Cowboys, it doesn't make this wholly apparent, explicit, but Dallas Cowboys in the 80s and the 90s were a very magical team. And I remember my dad not liking them because of their off-the-field antics. They were very magical players like Michael Irvin and a lot of these other guys always getting arrested for drugs and being showboats and doing dancing and really offending white norms. The thing is the team was overseen by white Southerners. Jerry Jones was a white Southerner. Jimmy Johnson was a white Southerner, who was their main coach who encouraged us. And then Barry Switzer was also a white Southerner, who was the replacement coach for Jimmy Johnson. And then Troy Aikman grew up in Oklahoma, but he's got a draw. I'd still say he's a white Southerner. So they're all four white Southerners, and they're supporting a lot of the magic of their team. Now, in all four of them, I think, Jones is very conservative. He supported Trump. I'd imagine Jimmy Johnson, Switzer, and Aikman supported Trump, but I don't know. Aikman has a conservative reputation, and Aikman was also attacked for being a racist because he yelled at his black teammates more than he did white players. But it's majority black team, and they even interview Emmitt Smith, who's like, most of the guys on our team are black, so of course he's gonna be yelling at them more than the white players because that's who's starting, that's who's playing. But all of them were encouraging a lot of the magic behavior and stuff. But then when it comes to their social circle and, who they're dating and who they're associating with on a social life, they want to keep that off. They want to keep it restricted. So there's the South's approach to race is very complicated, and it's something you would really understand if you grew up there. And so I think the best discrepancy for that is being in an all-white fraternity and getting upset if there's like a black potential recruit coming, and then like, hell no, we're not allowing that, and then that Saturday rooting for an entirely black offense. That's just what it is. There's a kind of cognitive dissonance there. So he's got one about an Indian man did an illegal. It's about the Sikh driver end up killing 3 Haitians. At this point, will more and more accidents be like this? Will all foreign-born immigrants involved and Syro-Americans? At this point, isn't 20% of the American population foreign-born? Well, there was a big accident in New York. You're doing this tweet where I said that this is like another thing, but there was an accident, bus accident in New York where it was like all immigrants involved. There's going to be plenty of whites involved in this. It's just that, it's not 20% of the population is foreign born. I might have said that it could possibly be it. It's at least 16%. We've never had this highest percentage. It's the highest percentage of our population is foreign born. And we don't fully know how much of our population is foreign born because we've got all these illegal immigrants here and we don't have a proper number for how many of them are here. So yeah, you'll probably see more accidents, and I don't think that they are very good drivers. They made complaints in Springfield and Charleroi last year about how horrible the Haitians were, and one of the Haitians caused a horrific bus accident that killed one of the kids, but then the family was like, we wish it was a white guy. Well, who's going to be driving that recklessly? So you'll probably see more of that, is that the immigrants are not aware of our roadways as the American citizens are. So that's K-Max's questions. We got another college football question from Ken. His first question is, I'll go with the college football one. Is the Arch Manning hype train officially over? I don't think so. It's his first start. It was a really boring game. I watched it. I was like, wow, this is going to be exciting. And it just sucked to watch. And I've heard some people like defensive contests or IQ tests of whether you watch football. It's like, man, sometimes it's just really boring games. And I wanted Arch Manning to really show off his talent, and he didn't. But he might get in the flow later this year. It's his, he's playing in a tough environment. He's a young guy. He's got a lot more opportunities to show he can play in a high pressure environment. So I don't think the hype train is officially over. We hope it's not. We support Arch Manning. His other question is, if only people who had above a certain IQ, let's say 100 or 110, but you can decide what would be we'll say 100 or 110, were allowed to vote, what would the electoral consequences be? Well, one, the black vote would be completely wiped out, so you'd have no black vote. But at the same time, probably a lot of the white working class vote would be, if it's 110, we'll say it's 110. That's pretty much going to be the college degree holding America that's allowed to vote if it's 110. Even though we would think, right-wing Twitter would think if you have it would actually be the non-college degree holding demographic that would be voting. So it'd be based on college degree holding. That would probably favor Democrats, even without the black vote. But we lose a lot of the white. It depends. If it's 100, it would favor us. I would still say it would favor us. If it's 110, it would be basically what you see with a college degree holding demographic, and we're losing that vote. But it wouldn't be like overwhelmingly blue. It'd be, a narrow majority that they would have in the country, but it'd be very tough for us to win presidential contests if it was 110. So even without the black vote, we would change a lot of our politics because everything would be about winning over the college educated vote. And, both sides would probably be calling for student loan forgiveness. There'd be all these attempts to make themselves more appealing to a college educated demographic. You'd probably return to a more civil discourse and everyone just debating the issues. probably be boring. It probably would maybe not be for the best of our politics. Even with the WWE aspect of it, it has made our politics a lot better. I mean, if we did not have the WWE aspect, they would then all be arguing for amnesty, and especially Republicans would probably be more open to amnesty because we'd never have to worry about these people being able to vote. You know, they don't have a 110 IQ, so they'd be like, let's bring in more cheap foreign labor. Who gives a shit? Like, they're never going to reach that IQ level. So I probably would say it would not be good. There'd be a ton of Indians voting, unfortunately. So, yeah, I don't think it's probably not the best. We think that, like, having poll tests and stuff would favor us, but it would. It probably wouldn't. But if it was 100, I would say we'd still be in good shape. 100, it would be good. 110, it would favor Democrats. That would be my opinion on that. Now we got 2 questions from Gillis Enjoyer. He said on Twitter that Fox News HR higher up has a trans kid, and that is why the anchors are all terrified to name the Minneapolis shooter as trans. Do you think this is true? And if so, where do you stand on Fox at the moment? Is it fully written off as cucked, or is there still value to it? I don't believe that. I don't. They do a ton of anti-trans content. Like, what do you expect? It's like they're not going to call for like rounding up all trans people and shipping them out to a concentration camp. It's just not going to happen. Fox is fine. The thing is like everyone, because the reason why all these people are anti-Fox is because like Newsmax, One America, and a lot of these competitors like push their talking points to influencers and want them to bring down Fox. You know, there was a bizarre statement by Trey Gowdy. He's like, it's a what, man? And then they're like, this is proof of conspiracy. We have to view everything as conspiracy. I probably think there is probably a Fox News exec with probably a trans kid. But that doesn't make them like have pro-trans content. And it's just one segment where they had it. I mean, you really should focus on Trey Gowdy, not Fox News. At that. And I mean, Fox is Fox, but it's like a fully pro-Trump propaganda vehicle. And Fox has significantly proved over the last decade. I remember watching it a lot over Thanksgiving, and all they were talking about is how Daniel Penny is a hero and how illegal immigrants are the greatest menace to our society. We need mass deportations. And that was far better content. And this is not just like, they no longer have Tucker anymore. This is their day-to-day content. This is the content they're running every hour. And this is the message that they're getting out there, that we're supporting a white guy who stood up to a black criminal, and we are standing, and we want every single illegal immigrant deported from this country. And they still have all this content there. It's way better. And people are like, you wanting to write it off. It's like the only cable news channel succeeding. There's been attempts to boycott it, but it's, it reaches a far bigger audience than any other format. So no, I'm pro Fox. The blame for that segment should be put on Trey Gowdy, not Fox News. That's my opinion of it. That's what the segment that everyone was mad about. And then they're all wanting you to watch like One America and Newsmax, which is just inferior products. They're not as good. Even when I'm not anti-Newsmax or One America or Real America's Voice or anything, but the funny thing is when you watch those channels, like all their ads, like you feel like they're trying to steal your kidney or something. It's like, you watch this, like, what type of scam is this running on this channel? So that is an interesting point. I think Fox is fine. We'd be a lot worse off without Fox. That's my opinion. And then you're like, once the boomers die off, like we're all going to be watching, I don't know, TRS or something. That's not going to be the case. So, I think that was just one segment. 2, I've read multiple stories in the recent week that various judges have ruled against the Trump administration over separate deportation cases, one of which involved Venezuelans. Any thoughts on these? Will they all eventually just go up to SCOTUS, who will rule in the admin's favor? Likely so. The thing is, there's a lot of liberal federal court judges, a lot of Obama appointees and Biden appointees. They're going to be ruling against Trump. And anytime this happens, people are like, it's time to ban the courts and to assume total Caesar control. And I'm like, you wait for the process to play out. We also don't have the public support to do that yet. So generally, the courts have been favorable to the right. The courts have, without the courts, abortion would be fully legal in every state in the country. We'd still have affirmative action. We'd have a lot more gun rights restricted. The way redistricting would overwhelmingly favor Democrats. We'd have insane voting rights rules. The courts do fine. Courts have generally been favorable to the right. Whenever you want to eliminate them, it's just what happens. Let the process play out. Generally, these deportations will favor us. They're trying to get, they know, the thing is that they do court shopping. The right did this under Biden. The left is doing that. We've limited their power with the SCOTUS ruling against nationwide injunctions, but they're still able to prevent deportations and other things. Also, there was a ruling in California where they said that the Trump's policy is racist, so they're limiting some of their ability to arrest and deport illegal migrants because of that. So I don't know. It'll be fine. The process will play out in our favor, in my opinion. A question from Doghouse Riley. He said, thoughts on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization conference currently underway that has Modi, Xi, Putin, and more in attendance. I don't know if that deeper thoughts. It's a sign that Xi is trying to get China to try to be the global hegemon. And bringing Modi and Putin there, it's we've got other powers there. But the dollar is still dominant. They're still not able to cooperate on a level that U.S.-led global organizations are. But it's really China is trying to replace America as the global hegemon, and this is part of the efforts. It's very difficult when India and China hate each other to do that. And also China and Russia aren't even that, even though Russia is like a junior partner to China, China and Russia have historically never gotten along. It's why, part of this, it's a big reason why the Sino-Soviet split happened. It's like a lot of these countries, they're just, I don't know if geographically disposed to it or just mentally disposed to just always being enemies. It's kind of like us and Russia. We're never going to be friends with Russia. And you always have those problems. And with Xi, it's very difficult for him to make China the global hegemon. But outside of that, it's just another attempt for it. Deeper thoughts. I'd have to look more into it, but no, that's basically my points about that. We have a similar question of not much deeper thoughts from New England Refugee. He said, I heard that the French government will collapse on the 8th if Macron does not declare emergency powers. If he does it, it is likely the same budget crisis will arise in 3 months. Do you believe he will declare an emergency? If not, what are National Rally's chances right now of winning the ensuing elections? Well, I'm not, once again, I'm an American, so I'm not that deeply versed in French politics, and it's mainly in budget crisis. From what I know is that having another elections is not going to be in his favor. So he needs to prevent another election happening because it's going to further weaken Macron in it's less than 2 years. It's only a year and a half of power he has left. It's like April 2027 is new presidential election. So he's got almost a little over a year and a half left in power. And, he doesn't want to have further weaken his government. He's going to have to find a new prime minister to, guide them through the budget crisis and do the dirty work and unpopular work of solving it. Likely does emergency powers, but there's an unwillingness. He's trying to get center-right politicians to take it up, but a lot of them don't want to do this because they have presidential ambitions, and they know if they're the fall guy for this, that it's going to be very tough for them to win the presidency. So, and there's a ton of center-right competition because they think that due to Le Pen being barred from running for president, that could be overturned, is that it's very, very good for a center-right guy to be the next president of France. Someone from the Republicans. So a lot of them are lining up and trying to shore up their credentials, and if they become the prime minister, that would potentially end their potential to ever be president. So a lot of them don't want to do that. But outside of that, I think all I can say is that he's probably going to declare some type of emergency or do something to prevent new elections, because whatever happens, it's not going to be in his favor. So that is New England refugee. LK Rourke is said his stuff is just saved for the mailbag, so we're going to save LK Rourke for the mailbag. Octavius has a question. He wanted to know, one of the things that has me concerned for years is the rise of conspiracy theories among the right. Things certainly seem interesting enough without having to discredit ourselves through slop conspiracy theories and politicians like Nancy Mace. In your opinion, how does our current political era of slop compare with prior times in American history? It seems like yellow journalism in the 1900s and pamphlets in the 1700s, 1800s were full of personal attacks and unfounded rumors. That said, it is worrisome to combine these conspiracy theories with what you refer to as Latin Americanization, i.e. extreme polarization, changing demographics, and blanket distrust of institutions. Well, those conspiracy theories have always been very important to America. I mean, we got a revolution thanks to conspiracy theories. We thought that the crown was going to take away all our rights and impose popery on us, and due to these theories, we were able to rally people to overthrow the king, or overthrow the king's rule in the United States. And then we continued on conspiracy theories. There was fears over Masons, fears over Catholics, fears over communists, warranted fears over communists. And now today, it's more of just an entertainment option for us. And it doesn't, there's so many just competing conspiracy theories that, and the reason why people do this is because of its audience captures, that they know it's what the audience wants and they just deliver to the audience it's more just entertaining rather than to achieve a political goal. Like if you wanted America to have independence for reasonable grounds, it's toward your economic interests, or you realize that the Britain was strangling America's economic development and its expansion to the West, and you had to rely on conspiracy theories to get the people on your side, then that was a political goal. But today, the conspiracy theories themselves are the goal, because it's not even to serve a political goal. It's simply to entertain the audience and to find whatever will entertain them. And usually it's driving political apathy, because it's like, you shouldn't vote. You should, whatever happens in politics is going to be a failure. It's already linked up. It's already secured. You should ignore it. Whatever. Just, a revolution will happen, but you'll not have to be involved in it. And so it's more supporting apathy and lack of activism than anything else with the conspiracy theories. Like, there's no solution to, if you believe like space lasers are responsible for all the forest fires, then like what's the solution to that? Or every weather disaster is, caused by weather machines. We have figured out arguments against common left-wing refrains when everything happens. When natural disaster happens, the left blames climate change. We now either blame space lasers or weather machines for it. So we have now a full answer that's like able to hype people up and get them angrier than climate change. And when mass shootings happen, now we have demons to blame, and that creates more hysteria than hysteria over guns. I don't think that's a positive development, but it is a development. Then instead, we create this more moral narrative that's that normal people are going to find insane and are not going to find it appealing. But for our own crowd, it gets them worked up into a moral hysteria that can compete against the lefts. But it's either just as insane or more insane. So I don't like the way conspiracy theories, in a lot of ways it hides the actual truth that's staring us in the face, but it wants to create a more fantastical explanation that entertains the audience more and will make them more engaged with your content. And I was seeing this with the mass shooting. It's like, the thing is staring at us at our face is that the encouragement of transgender and all that, and the greater proliferation of mental illness, this explains all this. and also just the guy getting online poisoned. It's like this. It's staring at us in the face. And when we see that, a lot of right wingers are like, let's focus on the fantastical. Let's, maybe evil forces were involved, but I mean, there's concrete forces you can focus on too. But they want to focus on demons. Some would have said that it was a deep state, also, of course, false flag op to distract people from, I don't know what the fuck. Like, I saw one, it's like it was used to distract us from the Scottish girl with the knife and the hatchet. And that tweet got like 30,000 likes. So it's like, it's all just a entertainment competition. So I think the real thing with the conspiracy theories is it leads ultimately to nothing. It's just another form of like, pornography in a way. It's just like, here's some dopamine rush. Here's some entertainment. Does it lead to anything? No, not really. Oh yeah, you are distrusted institutions. But what's the end result? You still do the same thing as you were doing before. It's not leading to revolution or anything. So that's my take on that. And we'll conclude with Costco Frank. If I didn't get your questions today, just harass me and I'll get them for Wednesday. So Costco Frank asks, what do you think of the Grateful Dead and broader jam band culture from a demographic perspective? It's extremely white-coded. Immigrants and magical groups have zero interest in it. Not coincidentally, the shows are always in a fun and safe space. Yes, there are barefoot boomers and some weed heads, but there's hardly any downscale elements that you find with bluegrass or new metal. I fucking hate jam bands. I hate Grateful Dead. So no, I'm not going to praise it. Yes, I understand it's white coded. I understand that it's like nice white people are into it, but the music sucks. Like, I'm not going to, I hate Grateful Dead. I hate jam bands. It is pure just noodling. You're just sitting there high and getting off on this stupid fucking music that has no structure, no emotion, and evokes you just being in a hammock all day. Like, that's not art. Art is supposed to be about struggle and crisis and about evoking the deeper emotions in people and evoking anguish and pain and sadness and the deeper emotions that inspire artistic motivation. It's not even like pure joy that this evokes. It just evokes like a nice day. You're laying on the grass and smoking weed. It's like, okay, I'd rather just experience that for myself rather than listen to music about that. And then it's just like pure noodling. It's just like, woo. It's like a bluesy guitar solo for 4 fucking minutes. I don't want to listen to this. I want to listen to music with structure. I want to listen to music with genuine passion and emotion. I don't want to listen to music that evokes me sitting in a fucking hammock all day. I would just want to be in a hammock all day. I don't want to listen to music about that. And an unfortunate aspect about American culture and a lot of the music we like is we like music that evokes just like, vacation time, which that's not what music's supposed to be. It's not like what Beethoven was trying to evoke with his music. It's not supposed to be just like, chicken fry or whatever, or Grateful Dead. So no, I don't like, I understand it's nice white people who like it in a similar way. It's like college football and baseball and golf, but I'm not going to like it. I would actually compare, no, I'm not that anti-golf, but I'm not really that into golf. My whole family is into it, but I find it, you're just going to upset yourself on a Saturday for 3 hours. I generally learned that from my family when they play golf, so I decided not to be into golf, and I find watching golf very boring, but I will still support golf because it's otherwise still white-coded, still very white-coded. It's very nice, even though it's very dull. But Grateful Dead, no, I'm not going to support it. It's a bridge too far for me. And every Grateful Dead fan wants to evangelize to you about Grateful Dead. And they're like, listen to this. And it's more fucking noodling. And it's like, why do I want to listen to this shit? This sucks. Like, this is not what art is supposed to be. And like, people are like, this is so amazing. You got to listen to this particular 1975 live set. It's really got the best fucking noodling. No, I'm never going to celebrate the Grateful Dead. I'm never going to endorse it. I don't care what the demographics are. I hate it. And so here I stand. I could do no other. That's my Martin Luther take. So sorry if you like Grateful Dead. I do understand. I remember from even Greek life culture that it would be like very fratty to be into jam bands. I know a lot of guys who are very right wing who are like that. I think that might be an older demographic who's doing that. I don't know if that's still the same with Zoomers. It was still the same with millennials. Certainly the same with Gen Xers. But yeah, we're not pro Grateful Dead. I would never add them to everyone. If I ever say something negative, like, "Can you add this to Greerhead Pledge?" We're not going to add it to the Greerhead Pledge, because I will understand that some people will be wayward and have poor music taste in some degrees. I mean, I probably I don't know. New metal sucks in a different way. Bluegrass is fine. Bluegrass is. I would love to go to a bluegrass concert. It's not that hick. It's very hick lib, but it's decent music. It's good music. Uh, Jam band's not. No, it's not. So that is it for Highly Respected today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We're gonna have normal content throughout this week. We're only gonna have one article this week, unless there's some breaking news event that I really want to talk about. Uh, we'll have that for Thursday. We're gonna have an article Tuesday, but I feel like since it's a holiday week, we'll take off for the one article. And as I said, people don't seem to care that much if I have two articles a week. So that's the only thing we'll note for this schedule. So look out for the rest of the content. So until next time, stay respected.